Hey, what's up? Today I'm going to be looking at the previewed Warhammer 40,000 Universe Beyond Magic the Gathering cards. So Warhammer and Magic the Gathering are my two biggest hobbies. Well, I kinda actually don't play Warhammer anymore because I think the game's kind of a mess, but I do appreciate miniature games and it's the biggest one, so I feel like I'm tethered to it whether I want to be or not. So at this point, I'm really just playing Grimdark Future by one-page rules with my Warhammer minis, but I'm always on the lookout for Games Workshop to get their shit together and make a good product. Something like that happening would just be really nice. So in case you hadn't heard, Wizards of the Coast is going to be releasing 4 Magic Commander decks based upon Warhammer 40,000 in October of this year. These two games coming together and making a baby is really exciting for me. And from the cards previewed so far, I'm really liking what I'm seeing. And here's a set symbol. It's a skull. Who would have thought? First up, we have a reprint of Fabricate, with alternate art featuring a member of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Probably a tech priest, judging by his big metal belly. I'm not entirely sure, but I bet you have to be important to have a belly like that. Regardless, the new artwork is great, and I think it fits the card perfectly. Fabricate is a tutor that I use in a bunch of decks. Who doesn't love grabbing any artifact of your choice out of your deck? Having this Martian fella slave over his workbench to make you the best tech he can muster just makes it that much better. Next up is the Vanguard Suppressor, a new card with a cost of blue and 3 for a 3/2 with flying. And whenever it manages to smack an opponent in combat, you draw a card. But here's the kicker, quite literally. You can pay an extra 2 colorless mana, any amount of times when you cast it, and each time you do, you make an additional token copy of this card. This is a new mechanic named Squad, and it's basically a multi-kicker cost to create copies of the cast card. Very cool. So this is a Space Marine suppressor, and in Warhammer they're a ranged support unit with big long-range guns and jump packs to zoom around the battlefield with. They're fielded in minimum squads of 3, so if you want to go for the flavor win here, always pay 8 mana when you play this card so you get 3 of them coming into play on cast. For 4 mana, I would say that this creature is overcosted for what it does. But with the possibility of making extra copies if you have the mana, there's definitely some value to be had here. Still though, if you're slamming 8 or 10 mana to make a bunch of these guys, you're more than likely tapping out on your turn and leaving yourself wide open for them to be wiped before they get a chance to connect on your next turn. Making a bunch of copies this way doesn't get around board wipes, but it does get around spot removal, so there's that. I think this card does a pretty good job of representing the unit from Warhammer. I don't think it's going to be super competitive, but I bet it could find a spot in some decks if your meta isn't too brutal. Speaking of brutal, the next card is Blood for the Blood God. I love that they put an exclamation mark on the end of this, truly a thing of beauty. This is an 11 cost instant for black, black, red, and 8. You can reduce this hefty casting cost by 1 colorless for each creature that died the turn you cast this. You then discard your hand, you draw 8 cards, you deal 8 damage to each opponent, and then Blood for the Blood God gets exiled. This thing is flavorful on so many levels, and is just so cool. Blood for the Blood God is something the followers of Khorne, also known as the Blood God, or the God of Murder, or the Lord of Skulls, like to say before they slay in the name of their master. Khorne also has a sacred number, and that number is 8, such as the colorless mana cost for this card, and the number of cards it has you draw, and the number of damage that it deals. Very nice. Khorne also has a symbol that represents their crew. This card depicts that symbol in the form of Space Marine corpses, lovingly arranged on the battlefield. Khorne's power grows from death, whether the dead are friend or foe, so the cost reduction for the total body count on the battlefield the turn you cast this card is just perfect. This card combos nicely with Blasphemous Act, which costs less for each creature on the battlefield. So if there are at least 8 creatures in play, you can pop off Blasphemous Act for 1 red, followed by Blood for the Blood God for just black, black, and red. Brutal. While this synergy is very powerful, outside of this scenario this card can be hard to cast. However, the fact that it is an instant also lets you blast it out for cheap if any of your opponents board wipe as well. I'm not sure how popular this card will be when it's released, but it's definitely cool as heck regardless. The last card in the first batch of previews is Abaddon the Despoiler, a potential Grixis commander for blue, black, red, and 2. This buys you a 5/5 with trample and gives spells you cast on your turn cascade as long as they cost equal to or less than the amount of life your opponents have lost this turn. In the lore, Abaddon is a Chaos Space Marine who leads the Black Legion. I actually don't know a lot about him, so I'm not sure if this card is nailing it on flavor or not, but I do know that he's tough and hits hard, so his power and toughness definitely check out. His Cascade ability seems really powerful, especially because once you deal some damage, all cards under that damage amount gain Cascade, not just one of them. At 5 cost, he's not cheap for your commander slot, and you're not likely going to be able to utilize his ability the turn you play him, since you'll likely be tapping out to plop him down. So he's a bit slow. But if you manage to keep him around, I imagine things could spiral out of control rather quickly for your opponents, as his cascading snowball of death grows larger and larger. On top of these previewed cards, the factions for the 4 commander decks have also been revealed. The Hive Fleets will be representing with this green-blue-red Tyrannid Swarm deck. I can't wait to see what kind of biomass devouring mechanics they come up with for these critters. The Necron Dynasties will be making an appearance with this mono-black deck. I'm sure there will be lots of reanimation effects going on with this one. I think it's interesting that they chose the mono-black instead of something like black-white in order to get another slice of the color pie in there. Seems like it might be kind of limiting to the card variety, but we'll have to wait and see. The Forces of the Imperium will be sporting the colors of white, blue, and black. The box has an Inquisitor on the front, who will presumably be one of the deck's commander options. There's a ton of variety in factions within the Imperium, so I'm curious how they're going to divvy it all up when it comes to this deck. Chaos will be ripping through the galaxy with this blue, black, and red Ruinous Powers deck. Abaddon himself is the poster child for this one, which makes sense as he represents Chaos Undivided, which is all 4 of the Chaos Gods under one banner. As with the Imperium, Chaos has a plethora of factions to choose from, and a ton of lore to pack within a single 100-card deck. As we head towards October, I'm sure there will be many more previews on the way, and I can't wait to see what else Wizards has put together for this collaboration. And now I want to give a very special thanks to our very first Patreon supporter, Peter Lind. Remember this name, for it will forever echo in the dankest, darkest recesses of the dungeon. Thanks again, Peter, and if you would like to join the Dungeoneers, head on over to patreon.com/dankestdungeon and sign up for $4.99 a month to gain access to patron-only post-game videos and for your name to be shouted out at the end of these videos. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.